My name's Adam Koch. I'm from the Great Northwest in the United States. I grew up as a kid skateboarding, snowboarding, windsurfing, racing sailboats at a very young age. And I discovered the sport of kiteboarding in 1997. You'd basically get a kite with some instructions in French and a VHS cassette and a pair of kite strings, and you kind of had to make your own bar and everything. So definitely at its infancy. Not cool at all at that point in time, but I was pretty intrigued by it. I gave up college, gave up my job, moved to Hawaii with $500 in my pocket and said, this is what I'm going to do. For me, it was just kind of like a really, really trippy way to get out in the waves and jump the waves and kind of break the laws of physics. To make a long story short, I retired at a certain point and I became a photographer and started a family. And after my wife and I split up, I was kind of left there with my hands in the air, like, what am I going to do now? And it was really cool that St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco came up with the Course Racing World Championships, the first World Championships ever. And as soon as I saw that, I was just like a kid in a candy store. I was like, I need a race board, I need a kite. And I didn't have any kite gear at the time. And so I just met up with Sky Solback, and he loaned me some hand-me-down kites, and I got into racing that way. In 2010, I essentially moved in my car to Texas to train for the World Championships and relentlessly trained every day like it was my religion. I met up with Robert Whittle and Matt Taggart with Ozone, and they sent me some of the latest prototypes that they had, and I was just really stoked to have some support from someone finally. And so at that point I just kind of had the platform that I needed to apply all the sailing skills that I learned growing up as a kid, and really kite racing is sailing. In fact, internationally, the ISAF, which governs sailing, recognizes it as a sailing sport. From my experience, the sport and the technology of the kites is just night and day compared to when I first started. I developed a few bars and some trim systems that really I can't take much credit for than applying what I used in sailing. I think having a width limit and a length limit on the board and weight limit, things like that, are good ways to keep the cost down. But really where we're at is if you made the board 75 centimeters wide, I can't drag my board bag onto the subway or onto a train. So for me, I like that aspect. I can already stand on the board when there's no power in my kite and float on it. So for me, I don't really need a bigger board. Maybe we could benefit from it, maybe we couldn't. But for me, I think that's good. Now, saying that you have to register a specific board or only certain people do it, from my opinion, it's people trying to have control over the design so that when they go and make a mold on a board, it's not oversold. I'm probably not being politically correct here, but who cares? This is the truth. And I think, custom boards, who cares? There are ways around every rule, and for sure, every board that comes out of China is not even close to the same. So if you think that for 1 second, you're wrong. Fin boxes can be crooked. This is the same thing same problem we've had in sailing, and this is the same thing that might be actually hurting sailing in some aspects. Is you want to buy a laser, you go in and the smart guys go and they go through 40 boats measuring it. That didn't make life better. It's better just to pay extra money and have it custom made and have it done right, in my opinion. I don't have a lot of money in this sport, and certainly it's not a way to make a comfortable living, but I do it because I love it. And I take it seriously. If my bar's crooked, that's not a good day on the water for me. I take that seriously. I want to tune it. If my fins are wrong, my fin designer, Palarista, will not sleep that night to fix them. And a lot of people don't have that luxury, and that's just the reality of being at the top of a sport. From my perspective in life, anybody who makes fun of someone for what they're doing is kind of trying to justify for why they do what they're doing. That's not really a happy way to live. I think growing up in high school, I was always made fun of by everybody for being a sailor. Like, literally, I had no friends in high school because I was a sailor. I'm like, well, whatever. I don't really care. I love the sport. This is what I choose to do. Thanks. Have a good day. I love sailing, and really kiteboarding is sailing, and we call it sailing. From what I see, especially in San Francisco Bay Area, is a lot of sailors getting into the sport, tons of them. And a lot of it's because they don't have as much money. So instead of sailing $1 million boat, they can go out and spend, $10,000, $5,000, and have the latest, most awesome racing equipment, and take a sport that they've been doing for a long time, passionate about, and increase the speed of what they're doing, increase the game, play the same game, and it's just like, it takes no effort at all to rig compared to a sailboat. It takes like a small army to get one of these boats working. So I see a lot of sailors looking at getting in this sport, and money in the sport is what everybody needs right now. Everybody's complaining about not enough money and not enough sponsorship dollars, and events are dying off, and I think anybody who's knocking the racing aspect right now just really doesn't understand it. When I first heard that kiteboarding might go into the Olympics, I was all for it. I was like, awesome. I mean, what child doesn't want to have a gold medal? I mean, it's definitely been a sailing dream of mine. In fact, before I got into kiteboarding and kite racing, I did 2 Olympic campaigns in 49ers in sailing. We didn't make it, but of course I'd love to have a gold medal. But when I start to hear about the politics and the details of it, I start to wonder if it is healthy for our sport. It's starting to steer our sport in a negative direction, I feel. Unless it's racing, it's not going to go in the Olympics, because what if it blows 2 knots, 4 knots? You're not going to be doing freestyle, and for sure it's not going to make our sport look good. I won't even go out and do freestyle unless it's blowing 25 knots, because it's just the physics. You just can't jump. You can't really do what you necessarily want to do. And so I think racing is what will hold the sport. And we're now kiting every day in Mission Bay in San Diego, and no one else can even go out on a twin tip or anything, even if they use the same kites we have. It's the boards and the fins and everything that generates lift. I can do 20 knots and 4 knots of wind across the wind and downwind, but I can't water relaunch my kite. So there's something going on there that's kind of a new experience for me as a kiter, and I'm really excited about it and excited to see how it can move forward. But to get back to the Olympics, I'm questioning whether it's healthy for our sport. Now they're starting to fight for slalom. I just, the differences between slalom and course racing for me is course racing is racing and you're playing chess. There's rules, there's etiquette. I can base a career off of that. I can spend $4,000 and go to Europe for a race and guarantee that if everybody follows the rules and everything goes right, at least I'm gonna do something bad for myself, and I can't just blame some guy who's having a bad day next to me. It's all on me. And also there's mutual respect out there. In slalom, it's a free-for-all. It's like there are no rules. It's really hard for me to justify going halfway around the world and spending all that money when someone could take me out the first race and I'm done for the year. From my perspective, I think it's growing really fast. I have Facebook messages like you wouldn't believe of people asking for what type of equipment. I'm a sailor. I want to get into course racing. How do I get how do I get one of those boards? How do I get those kites? Who do I talk to? It's just unbelievable. It's like a full-time job. It's like all these pro kiters, and excuse me for saying this, guys, but all these pro kiters that no longer had a place in the sport and trying to hang on to their sponsorships all looked at course racing like, oh, that's easy, I can do that. And they all flooded in and started doing it, and there was this big push, maybe 50 guys. And now those guys have moved on to other jobs because it didn't work, and it's more difficult than they thought it was going to be. And so they've dropped out. But the number hasn't changed yet to our eyes because they've been replaced by sailors. And so the numbers sustain the same, but it's really just a shift of people giving up and a new shift of people coming in because they finally see that it is sailing. And so I see a solid foundation being built here, and I see with the economy continuing to not be well, I see all these sailors who don't have rides anymore want to just take what little money they have and go and do the sport they grew up and that they love and they're really good at. And it's going to be really scary when those guys get involved because they know the game better than I do. Kiteboarders think that what we're doing is too expensive because they're used to spending less money on a board. Well, I pay $2,000 for my race board, the same as everybody else. And I mean, you know, you on a Moth, which is a foiling sailboat, you break your foil, you know, underneath just by capsizing, and that's $1,000 right there to those guys. Well, we don't do that with our gear. You know, we can beat up our gear and repair it. Yeah, I mean, and we're beating those high-performance sailing boats. We probably are debatably the fastest sailing vessel on the water. The equipment race is over. It's done. You can buy, I've been through 4 race boards in the last, whatever, not even a year. And we went from a 65 to a 70, and then I sold the 70 and got what is now the stock design from Mike's lab. And we're all on the same board, and it's not going to change. It may not change for another 2 years. Ozone this year, we didn't change our product this year. It's the same product. So my second-hand gear that I'm handing down, you can buy it for half price, and maybe it won't hang with us top guys into the fleet, but it'll certainly beat some of the other product that's out there. And so now what's going to happen in this next like 6 months is there will be a flood of used equipment coming out that is going to be extremely competitive. I mean, when I change my fins now, we're down to like millimeters. We're not down to inches, and we're not down to different shapes. If I stacked, you know, 20 fins that I've been through in the last little while, you probably could not tell a difference between them with the tape measure. So we're honing in on what we're doing, and what we're finding actually is some of the new generations of stuff. Well, we like the old generation thing, and so I think it's safe to say if you want to get in the sport and you want to try to train, it's available now. So really what it comes down to is it comes to time on the water. He who sails more will win, and in sailing that's how it is. And for me it's like it's not about the equipment as much as it used to be anymore. It's not that equipment race. It's all about just training and using proper technique. And I mean, if Johnny and I are neck and neck, it comes down to who got their back foot in the foot strap first on who wins the race. So we train for that, and it's really getting to a very fun high level of just trying to be as perfect, more perfect than the guy next to you, although none of us are, you know, of course. I think really what it comes down to is who you're competing against. You can't really just expect to go out and buy an Indy car and compete in the Indy circuit or NASCAR or anything like that. You got to take it one step at a time. You got to start in the go-karts, and you got to take. If you try to ride my board, you'd probably hurt yourself just trying to carry it down to the beach. It takes evolution. I think if you want to learn how to race, learn how to tack first with the equipment you have on hand. Don't feel like you have to have that race gear to start taking steps in that direction. It doesn't matter whether you're in first or last, you're still racing against the guy next to you. And that's that's what's so beautiful about sailing and the sport of racing. You're not running heats. The person who is in last gets to sail longer than we do and race longer than we do. They're getting better practice. Eventually they're going to catch up. And there's a community. You come off the water and everybody had the same experience. And so now everybody has something in common. They were walking down the street and met each other in a bar otherwise without the racing. They may not ever become friends. And it's a lifestyle. Kiteboarders and yacht clubs don't seem to mix that greatly. It depends on the caliber of the yacht club. I'm usually can't find my razor and I'm too focused on my gear, so I'm usually a little bit unshaven and grubby looking, and most of us wear hats. You're not supposed to wear hats in a yacht club. You're supposed to wear blazers. I remember back in the day as a kid, they would have blazers for you to wear going in, or they wouldn't let you in. And now all of a sudden, because of kiteboarding, it's kind of loosening up the yacht clubs a little bit. They want people to be members. They want younger generations to buy into the yacht club, and it's a fun thing, being able to go into one after a race and have a hot shower and be able to sit at the bar with everybody. But for sure, I'd say we're loosening up the yacht clubs, and perhaps the yacht clubs and everything are making us get our stuff together a little bit more and become more of a professional sport. I feel welcome now when I go in there. At first I was a little intimidated. I was like, oh great, here we go, yacht club scene again. But the reality is skiff sailing, you know, high performance dinghy sailing, they're all like us kiteboarders. We are very similar breeds of people. So, you know, it's not necessarily kiteboarders that don't fit in sometimes there. It's also skiff sailors, and, you know, we all sleep in our car in the parking lot. We all buy a new set of fins instead of paying rent 1 month, and, you know, it's just, this is our life, man. This is what we choose to do.